Welcome back to Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the Visma Lease Bike 2026 preview. We have World Tour racing kicking off in 2 days, less than 2 days from the date of recording, Thursday, 15th of January, with the Women's Tour Down Under on Saturday, I believe, starting. And then we're into it 10 months straight. This will be the last preview. Benji and I think we, behind the scenes, this is one of the biggest things we sort of scrap about. Benji is more of a completion person. He's like, he will, if he says he's going to do a series of things, he will do it. I'm more a
Patrick, if it was up to me, we would do every pro team as well.
We do every pro team. We talk about, like, we do a best Conti. We do Tour de Suisse. We do a lot of different things, but it's good that
not Tour de Suisse.
No, we know we're not doing Tour de Suisse. Come on. Anyway, the team presentation for Visma Lease Bike was on Tuesday, the 13th of January. One of the later ones. I think we already know some of the we do know some of the UAE riders programs. They split the big three. We did that in their review. But now the Visma programs have come out. And I guess the reason we did it rather than prognosticating up front was the obvious sort of annual disclaimer from me. If you don't know, I work at Team Visma Lease Bike. I'm the head of strategy there on the management team, and I work on things like rider recruitment, transfers, and the race planning. So the scheduling of the riders with the rest of the management team and staff. So it didn't make much sense to like prognosticate on what schedule Matthew Brennan might be doing. Is he doing the Giro or the Vuelta? When, I would have already known what he was doing. And it's just easier and more straightforward for this team, at least, to do it after the team presentation. So you'll forgive us if it's a little bit tardy. But in that team presentation, Benji, yes?
The one important thing to note is that Patrick and I don't actually speak behind the scenes about his work at Visma. So I don't have a clue what happens in Visma, which I love because Benji, I can just full-mouthed shout at Visma in this podcast about Dwars door Vlaanderen tactics, about schedules. Oh la la, I can't wait. I've been waiting on this one. I've been waiting.
Oh, you know what? I was like, I had this thing over the Christmas or over winter. I was like,
yeah.
I think everyone's forgotten about the Dwars door Vlaanderen fuck up. Do you reckon people have forgotten about it? Like, do you reckon maybe not? And then the Australian Nationals happened. I was like, no. Because everyone was like, this is worse than the Visma in Dwars door Vlaanderen.
Hot take?
Maybe it wasn't.
I don't think it was worse.
I think it's a more complicated situation than it first appears.
I agree. In short, I want to discuss it because the Australian Championships ended with Patrick Eddy winning it from the wheel of Plapp, who did a lead out for him for the last 2 kilometers, catching his own teammate in the process, Durbridge, but the peloton also finished like 15 meters behind, so if Plapp does not ride here, the peloton wins. That said, he should be forcing Eddy to ride in the first place, to be clear, but it's not as simple as, Durbridge would have won if Plapp didn't ride. No, Durbridge was done for, The
whole problem was the way Jayco set the race up in the first place. The whole problem was having O'Connor and Durbridge in a breakaway that was uncooperative, doing way too much work in that breakaway for hours whilst Jay Vine chased behind, and then using O'Connor to do an all-out pull for Durbridge to go solo. I mean, Durbridge would have got caught last year when he won, were it not for Plapp catching and towing him. So that was the problem. And then Jay Vine rode behind them, and they probably would have been better off having a group with Jay Vine in it than working him over on a final lap.
That said, Jay Vine's ability to not just hate watch, but also hate ride in races, because let's be honest about it, he's the reason that the peloton comes so close in the first place by the end, because he's riding all day just for the sakes of ruining Jayco. That's what his Instagram post felt like. I love that. I absolutely love that, because in the end, the closeness of the peloton is kind of what ruined Jayco as well. So anyway, it was a fun start to the season.
And let's not let Plapp and O'Connor off scot-free.
Yeah.
Like, also in the they could have played the micro strategy or tactics of the actual final 10 minutes a lot better too, and actually making Eddie work, attacking to make Eddie close them instead of. So it's like, Oliver Bed, he was very strong actually, but he was sort of done for. So they also didn't extract every ounce out of their numerical advantage against Eddie, and Eddie, good win from him. Hope he maybe gets I reckon he should actually just race for Brennan and rack up prize money in Asia this year. That's probably better than like riding in Benji's backyard for minimum wage again.
Wow!
Ask me.
If you can get a 2-year World Tour contract out of getting a KOM jersey with Brennan at the Santa Sweden Under in a week, then who knows?
He make more money in Asia.
Well, yeah, but his future career is more future-proof if he doesn't ride in Asia for Brennan, you know.
Which Brennan are we talking about? Because this is the Team Visma Lease Bike preview, and we've gone on long enough talking about the Australian National Champs, even though I always like talking about it. So let's go to their 2025 season. We will get to Simon Yates' retirement, of course, but that comes not even in 2025. But let's recap the 2025 season first. We have 40 victories, 19 at World Tour level compared to 32 and 18 in 2024, down from 69 total victories and double the World Tour wins in 2023, 69 and 38. And the team has changed a lot but the big two wins, I would say, well, not I would say, they are the big two wins, are the Vuelta and the Giro d'Italia. Yeah. They're the two big ones. No Monument, second in the Tour de France, and actually no Cobble Classic or World Tour one-day victory at all, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So stage racing, good again. Probably every other team would trade places for the Grand Tour results except for UAE. But the classics, it wasn't as seamless as definitely 22-23 Benji.
I think that's fair. Like, sure, I did not expect Wout van Aert to dominate a Monument, then win RVV and Paris-Roubaix or be the favorite for it. So him coming fourth at RVV and fourth at Paris-Roubaix, I think that's a fine result. Sure, maybe a podium would have been better on Roubaix. That, I think, is a fair thing to say. The real downside to the classics for me is the fact that they couldn't win another classic outside of the Monuments, where the Van der Poels and the Pogacars of the world are not present. For example, Tours de Vlaanderen. Like, that is the perfect example where they've had the stronger team, they were in a perfect situation, and they choked it in the end. And that should have been their classic victory, even though I think I've made a few jokes over the last couple of years that Tours de Vlaanderen is a glorified pro race, but I think that's a controversial statement, and I might not be allowed back in Belgium after that. But it's still a World Tour race right now at the moment. So if they had won that, it would look a little bit better because then they would have a one-day race in World Tour. But it's also some memories like, I don't remember Visma being openly very good in Omloop, for example. I think Jorgensen might have been the best rider in E3, if I recall correctly. And while it was all the way not looking that good on the Tyenberg, if I recall correctly. So there were these moments in the classics where they just were uncompetitive, and you don't want to see that for Visma. Do you think there's also a world in which Wout skipping Strade, Wout skipping MSR and so forth doesn't help them in the long run, you know?
Well, yeah, you say no Monument victory, but then, yeah, Van Aert won Sanremo before, arguably the Monument that suits him the best. And it's also the one that Pogacar can't, like, he obviously puts his stamp on the race, but he doesn't dominate it. Like, people were able to follow him. In RVV, like we said before the race, no one's going to follow him. Sanremo, it is a bit more of an open race. Ghana followed. And Omloop, I think the whole classics, Christophe Laporte was sorely missed. He's one of the best riders in positioning in the world. He's also very good. Like 22, 23 was outstanding in the classics. And so, yeah, him not being there for any of the classics was a huge loss. He's probably, on his day, top 10 classics rider in the world. And unlike Jorgensen, unlike Van Baarle, unlike Benoot, when he gets into a group of four, Binny aside and Van Wevelgem 22, you're usually pretty confident he's going to get you a good result, or he's competitive for the win, or Trentin in Paris Tour. But so he was a big miss, and also depth. I think like there was Amstel Gold Race. I think the result was actually not bad in the end. Like two in the top 10, Van Aert fourth or fifth, very very strong again, and he was like bigger than everyone else. Was tiny in the front or top 10, but the depth of the team was not the same as UAE's depth. So we'll see if the transfers have alleviated that or changed that, because I think like Maclay and Vermota were starting a lot of these big classics.
But for me, the real differentiator for the season of Visma is the obvious one, the fact that Simon Yates winning the Giro, and also in such a surprising fashion in the last week. Sure, he was consistent throughout the entire Giro, also on the super wet stage that went into Slovenia, if I recall, Nova Gorica. And
stage 14, the one where Pedersen crashed with Ciccone.
Yeah, it's more the fact that he ends up winning that Grand Tour, brings their total in the season to 2 Grand Tour victories and a second place at the Tour de France, winning the Giro with Simon Yates, winning the Vuelta with Jonas Vingegaard, plus 3 stages there, a stage for Simon Yates no, actually he didn't win that Finestre stage at the Giro. I think, was it Harper or O'Connor, one of the two?
Vingegaard
they all
won
look
it,
the same, Australians, right? Olaf Koy won 2 stages, and Wout van Aert won the gravel stage. So those were 2 very successful Grand Tours for Visma Lease Bike. Tour de France, you're hunting for the victory. Beating Pogacar is not the easiest thing to do in the world, but it's that Giro victory that makes this season go for me from a mediocre at best season to a good season. I think this is a good season for Visma Lease Bike, because winning 2 Grand Tours in a year with a UAE team that exists is definitely not a given.
Yeah, I think 2 Grand Tours plus second at the Tour is a good season. Even if you think, okay, with Zangler, Laporte, Van Aert, Brennan, Koy on the roster, should there be a few more victories in one-day races, or Eschborn Frankfurt or Kurne? I think Koy was second in Kurne. The answer is probably yes. I think 40 wins total is maybe 5 to 10 light on what this team could have been doing on paper, but season not done on paper, and they had availability issues again with a big rider in Laporte. Although what was Van Aert? I guess Van Aert was also didn't do any like farming races either. Like he doesn't do a Tour de la Provence, and then when he goes to Deutschland is to get into shape and he helps Brennan. Whereas Pedersen, on the other hand, he goes to Denmark, he goes to Provence, and he's cleaning up 8 wins in these races.
That is true, but also Wout van Aert is at a level where I don't expect him to go to Provence and try to clean up victories like that. So that's kind of like the situation that Visma Lease Bike is in as well, I would say. But I think another factor is the upcoming Matthew Brennan makes this team look a bit more attractive, I would say, because Matthew Brennan is obviously a breakout rider of 2025, but it's also the factor that is Matthew Brennan Matthew Brennan reminds me of an upgraded version of Ethan Hayter's breakout season before Ethan Hayter became current Ethan Hayter.
Yeah, if you look at it just superficially at the wins, it's quite similar. If you just look at a Romandy stage, a Poland stage, a Norway GC, it looks very, very similar. I would say the difference is the Catalunya win is just out of control. Like the one where he beat Groves, that's one of the craziest wins of the year. And also the positioning in beating Milan in a sprint, positioning in classics, like then just natural ability to position and slide his way around the peloton. That's the difference. But you're right, it's not that dissimilar Palmares wise, and I think that's again, 40 wins is a little bit light. Grand Tour is very good. Classics a bit down. The other big positive is developing another superstar, because UAE keep developing them, and it's an arms race. Lidl have brought some in. Decathlon have brought one up. Decathlon they have a GC one, and you can't fall behind. And Brennan was that bright spot, because he's a superstar in the bidding, and we'll get to transfers in a sec.
But what do you feel about Matthew Brennan right now? If you had to pave his future in terms of the rider he becomes, because if I look at Matthew Brennan right now, maybe I'm still on the conservative fashion, because I still look at him as a as a super successful future versatile sprinter, while I feel like you lean more towards he can start winning the hilly classics in the next couple of years. And is it the fact that Bologna was a bit of a meh on the hills that I'm like pushing a set back of okay, I want to see it first?
Well, you mean Liège?
No, I mean like RVV territory.
I mean, at the moment, nobody can beat Pogacar in RVV.
Yeah. But hypothetically, even if Pogacar wasn't there, could Brennan top 5 it?
You mean post Pogacar, post MVDP era when Brennan hits his peak, whenever that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Because is he a bit weird comparison? I'm sorry, but does he not give Sagan vibes in terms of like the punchiness as a versatile sprinter?
Yeah, like Coppa Bernocchi is a good example. I guess not the biggest race, but decent start list. And the counter, I'll bring up the counterpoint to my own point in a second, which is Michael Matthews, but who was also in Coppa Bernocchi. But yeah, the way Brennan bridged across the break in Bernocchi, that's not just a sprinter who like can survive a hill pretty well and then, then do a good sprint. He's like bridging across with a group of Jay Vine in the wheel, attacking that group, dropping Jay Vine, getting across the front group with Koos, starting to pull. It's a bit more than just a versatile sprinter, and it's like looks like a proper all-round classics rider. But we'll see. I mean, he's like 19, 20 years old. Who knows? But Visma are going to need him to be that. And you don't know when the Pogba MVDP era might end. Whereas Paul Manier, I more see really in that like can survive a hill and then sprinter so far.
Yeah,
like I'm not seeing Manier race yet.
I see that, but I would say that Brennan is just more versatile. That's how I perceive it right now. Manier can get over a hill every now and then, but I feel like Manier is more likely to focus on pure sprints than Brennan, who might focus more on trying to win the classics kind of vibes. That's the perception I have at the moment. And I see the Quick-Step World talk about Manier is the new Tom Bonen, but Tom Bonen was also not the most punchy rider in the world.
What if Paul Manier has the same power profile as Bonen, but cycling's just changed? That might be true as well.
I think that's a very good point, actually. Because the races are way more aggressive. The parcours are harder. Like the current parcours of REV. I think, did Bonen win on it once against Pozzato, or am I imagining that in 2012?
I don't know.
Do you even know who Pozzato is?
Kick. Filippo Pozzato, yeah, he had like cool Instagram photos where his like rest day photos were a little bit provocative, I believe. That's how I know him. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, we've read the season. Some negatives, some positives, but overall has to be, well, not has to be. Everyone has their own opinion. Let us know in the comments. But I think it was a good season overall. If you're unhappy after 2 Grand Tour wins, then like what are we doing? I mean, everyone wants to strive for better, but true. 2023 did set a difficult benchmark. Before we get into the transfers, the new year is here, and a word from Morton. Now's the perfect time to reset, not just your goals, but how you train and fuel to reach them. Morton's built for athletes who care about performance and precision, and because we're precise, we have a new discount code for 2026. Change the code. It's available for you. The hydrogel technology from Morton allows you to take in high amounts of carbohydrates, and if you're on the indoor trainer, doing a lot of watts, or not even a lot of watts, you'd be surprised how many calories you're burning on the indoor trainer. And also it gets hot in there, despite it being maybe cool conditions outside. Morton's hydrogel technology allows you to take that in without having gastrointestinal distress. Try it out. If you've not really tried gels before, if you've maybe tried older ones that are like sticky or have a weird taste, I would really recommend Morton because, I really like the flavor of Morton, how it goes down, the texture. I really like it as well. It doesn't get on your bibs in like a nasty way. It feels like just a clean fuel, and that's what it is. So get your season started the right way. Head to Morton.com and use code LRCP2026. That's all caps LRCP2026 for 20% off your order. They keep doing 20% off. I keep saying it's too generous, but yeah, use it while you can before they listen to me at Morton. Okay, transfers. Benji, outgoing.
Simon Yates. Let's talk about it. That's the first one I want to discuss.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's not even a yeah, wow. I was working off your notes. I was like, again, you've like, you know, when you fall asleep, and you're like saying, and then you like wake up, you're like, oh no, that thing did happen. That's not good. So for the team's ambitions, at least, because Simon Yates snap retired. I think this was
Last
a week
week
ago.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, the
first week of
announcement came.
January. The announcement was made by Visma itself on Twitter. I don't know if I assume Simon Yates has posted something as well himself, but it was just a generic retirement post, right? Gotta say, it was a wall of text, and when I see a wall of text, I'm like, I'm out, buddy. I'm happy to have seen you in the sport of cycling.
I'm bringing it up now because I knew Benji didn't read it. I knew he's seen the text. He's like, whoa. He's like, I'm happy for you, or I'm sorry for your loss. Like, he's just done that. I'm pretty sure it's exactly how I react to all of text. It's the pinned post on Visma's Instagram, but I'm not logged into Instagram on my computer.
Okay, I'm gonna resolve it for you. So, Visma Lease bike posted a retirement post. Yes, I'm scrolling down to it right now, and holy shit, they post so much on Twitter. There we go. A message from Simon. They just had
the media day.
All. Yeah, that's true. Fair. They can both. Shush, Patrick. Shush. I'm channeling my inner Simon Yates. Dear all, I have made the decision to retire from professional cycling. This may come as a surprise. So much text, bro. This may come as a surprise to many, but it's not a decision I've made lightly. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and it now feels like the right moment to step away from the sport. Cycling's been a large part of my life. Yada, 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 yada. I'm proud of what I've achieved. I'm skipping lines. I'm sorry. To my team, Visma Lease bike, thank you for understanding and support my decision to stop now. To my family, share the sacrifices. Yada, yada, yada. I step away from professional cycling with deep pride. I'm sorry, but it's so fucking long.
It's not that long. It's a totally normal length of a retirement post. But yeah, Simon Yates retires. I think after the Giro, when we saw the images, and there's actually just a tweet above that is, reminder that I'll never forget the Finestra stage. And because Simon Yates has always come across as like a really in-race, like composed guy. He's there, and then bang, you might not have seen him for 2 weeks, and suddenly he's like doing a daring move off the front and wins a stage in the Giro stage 14 in 2022, I think, but Torino stage.
It's not always been like that. I feel like we've had multiple positions, and was he also not one of the favorites for the Jai Hindley Giro d'Italia with Gary Thomas that fell over a beat on at the start, and he was riding for Jayco in that year, or Mitchelton, Scott maybe at that time, and then it didn't really work out for Simon Yates, and then at the end of the day, at the end of the 3 weeks, it was Jai Hindley winning. But it's also, this guy won 2 Grand Tours in his career, not just the Giro, also the Vuelta against Miguel Angel Lopez, I think, back in pure guess 2018. Really? 2018. He had a good season then.
That was against Enrique. That was against Quickstep Enrique, his first second at the Vuelta. But seeing Yates' reaction after the Finestra stage, I think you rarely see any cyclist like that, and it's unsurprising. Like, it was that stage is going to live like in the memory forever. Crazy stage, but he was so emotional after that you think maybe like is cycling going to get any better?
Yeah, I see that. Like, when I saw the retirement post a week, I was like, yeah, it feels like a bit of a mic drop moment, because 11 Grand Tour stage wins, 2 Grand Tour victories, winning in the craziest fashion on the Finestre stage, and then dipping out after that season, winning on top of your career, surprised, so to say. I wasn't necessarily surprised. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, it's sad to have him leave the sport in the sense, But if I was in his position, and let's say he continues for 3 more years, he might regret that he didn't retire at the top of his game in a cool moment, you know? That's how I perceived it. So I enjoyed that fashion. But when you start thinking more and more about the retirement happening in the first week of January, then you do wonder, how long ago was this discussed? Was this a decision that had been made after the Giro d'Italia? Was this decided at the start of January, which that would have been a bit of a problem, so to say? So those questions arise, and that was a question that I saw on social media as well, because a lot of people were saying, what do you think about his retirement of Simon Yates? And I hadn't thought about it that much in the first few days after the retirement. I was like, sure, okay. He decided to retire at the top of his game, but like, the weird thing to me, obviously you're more tapped in than I am, but the weird thing to me is that I'm looking at a team, Visma Lease Bike. They've got, in total, signed 30 riders, including Simon Yates, right? At the end of 2025, or was it 29?
Sorry, I was reading more quotes. When was...
Oh, no worries. So,
Yates,
to
Yates
me, the
was
weird
the
thing
29th
is...
rider.
Okay, well, that doesn't really support my argument. I was about to make that their team was full and one of their riders was gone, and they would have replaced him. But it's weird to me that Visma Lease Bike starts the 2026 season with 28 riders. That was the first red flag that showed up in my head. Because first you're like, okay, fairs. But starting with 28 riders, not necessarily seeing a replacement for Simon Yates in the signings, knowing that Simon Yates' money would free up, even though the market wasn't necessarily perfect for that either, I would say. But those were a few questions that then came to me. But do we know from public statements if this happened last week or last year, this retirement?
Well, Visma's team CEO, or the boss, Richard Plugger, said, Simon Yates called us over the Christmas period. We had a good talk, and it was a clear message. If someone calls you and says, I want to retire, what are you going to say? Don't do it. No, it doesn't work like that. So it was over the Christmas period.
Okay, because he was at the team camp
yesterday
in December.
CMB. Yeah, there's photos.
We saw him on pictures in December.
We can juxtapose this. It's unsurprising, like you said, because, yeah, is anything going to get better than the Giro win?
Yeah.
But then apparently, I didn't know this stat, apparently like no reigning Grand Tour winners had retired, except for like one 50 or 100 years ago. And you juxtapose it against another British Grand Tour winner who still hasn't retired, Chris Froome. No, but seriously, like, and that's where, Vingegaard says he respects Yates' decision, and sort of I respect the mic drop, like you say, because it could have, it's pretty easy, and we see it all the time. GC contenders get the big result, or a rider gets the big result. Let me get that 3-year big money, coast somewhere else, and like kind of pack it in.
Yeah, but
and
I fully respect the decision of Simon Yates to retire, but doing so around the Christmas period makes it impossible in my head for Visma Lease Bike to remotely replace you by the start of the 2026 season. You're kind of putting the team in some shit.
I mean, even if, but first of all, like and this was the busy transfer period, any of the riders that changed, the GC riders that changed hands, I mean, why would you go for them? And I was sitting here, a lot of the times thinking, wow, it's a lot of fuss over Ayuso. We've discussed the buyout figures, and then people are like, who are Visma getting? I'm like, well, it's the reigning. They have Vingegaard and the reigning Giro champ on the roster.
Not anymore, buddy.
So, yeah, and like Derek G changed hands, a whole host of Remco. Not that he was always going to Red Bull. Yeah. That seemed fettered from 5 years ago. But yeah, even if Vauquelin, Onley, all these GC guys changed teams. But then to your point, I mean, they're already gone by Christmas. Yep. Yeah, who are you picking up around the Christmas period.
And
Benji
also,
Narsen and fans.
I'm sorry, but I think I would be a pretty good replacement for Simon Yates at the Tour de France, buddy. I would single-handedly pull the peloton back. But I would say that I saw this article, I think, on Willerflits, where they were like debating which solutions Visma Lease could have to potentially replace Simon Yates. And I think the first point was signing a rider from another team, but
they said Ruben
that's
Guerrero.
not possible, right?
Like...
Ruben Guerrero. No, but is it even possible to sign people while the season happens? Because there's been changes in the rules, no?
Well, the UCI has the registration period, so you're not able to just, even if you could buy out another pro rider, you can only do it in August after 1 January, after 31 December. So that's if you want to do a buyout, the earliest you can do it is on 1 August, and then your other options are uncontracted riders.
I swear, back in the day, there were mid-season transfers in Dennis and maybe Bettiol at some point, no? Bettiol from EF to Astana?
That was in August.
And Dennis was in August. Yeah. It's all in August.
Yeah, you can't change from a pro team to another pro team during the season. Before August, sorry. So, not that, I mean, riders are also settled. There are riders out of contract, though. Like, some of them retired, and that's the thing. Like, if you like Lotto Intermarché, there's some riders that didn't get a contract. It gets to Christmas, they call it. Anyway, that's not. There's also just no one on the market to replace a reigning Giro d'Italia winner. He won the Giro d'Italia. Like, Finestre performance was crazy good, and he won a Tour de France stage. But would Visma do it again? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got Grand Tours hang forever. Not sure if that's... You don't get a banner for it. They don't grow on trees. We should bring banners in for cycling. Anyway, that's one big rider out. That was a snap to... Which was, breaking news last week. Tish Benoit, Koi off to Decathlon. I think we've spoken about this before. Benoit was like a anchor of all the one-day classics and the Tour de France the last 3-4 years. Koi was good for nearly 50 victories in his time for the team. So they were, riders that obviously would make the team better, but Decathlon, they got money to spend at the moment, and also they got opportunities to provide. I mean, Koi, I think, probably has been promised, I would guess, Tour de France leadership. He brought a train over with him. He deserves it. Like, Koi is, 23, 24, 50 pro victories. He deserves Tour de France to have a train there and to go to that race. So that's understandable. Keanu Brooks went to Movistar. I think we discussed that already. Now, with Yates being out, it thins out the climbing ranks a little bit more. Globe to Pinarello, Q365, Vermota. He's not retired. He's still, I think, looking for a contract. Volta went to Bahrain Victorious. McClay retired. Tosh van der Sande retired. And Van Baarle went to Soudal Quickstep.
But looking at these outgoing transfers, then it's one of the two sprinters, I would say, at Visma Lease, because I consider Banner. Who the fuck is Banner? Matthew Brennan also a top sprinter these days. Olaf Koe is gone. Brennan's in an earlier phase of his career, so he'll be more okay with not going to the Tour de France and maybe going to another Grand Tour to start his GT adventure. So that fits the storyline, the narrative here. Van Baarle leaving doesn't really move me too much, because in the last couple of years he had positioning issues in the classics, so doesn't really shock me that he's departing from this team. Now Walter leaving, all those names leaving, I feel like, okay, I expected this. Kian Uitenbroek's leaving, I kind of expected this. Despite his roar back upwards in 2025, still wasn't expecting an extension here. Globe to Pinarello, I've got a similar feeling about everybody. Maybe Tish Benoit is the one where you're like, okay, he probably could have had an opportunity to stay, but he chose for another opportunity and another departure to another team, and probably got quite a bit of money for doing so in the first place. But the point I'm trying to make here is, I'm looking at these departures. It's pretty obvious that Simon Yates is the biggest loss, I would say, of everybody that's leaving, because he literally just won a Grand Tour.
And climbing, yeah. Koi for total wins.
Yeah, but for me, controversial take.
You're an absolute
wins is-
you are a Koi. You're a Koi hater. I'm
not a Koi hater. I just don't accept that he was a top 3 World Tour sprinter in the last 3 years. He was fourth all the time, which is fine. Everybody, 90% of the peloton would like to be Olaf Koi. But I don't need to pretend he was as good as Jasper Philipsen, as Tim Merlier and Jonathan Milan.
Where was Jasper Philipsen following Mads Pedersen on the Ploegstraat in Gent-Wevelgem? And then Pedersen had to crash him.
Where was Jasper Philipsen? Not in the ditch 5 seconds later.
Dude, Koi's one of the best to ever do it. Plue, I have no idea how he got around that course, and then he could have won, should have won. It's just, yeah, he's one of my favorite riders ever, actually.
But
anyway, they're the 2 big losses in terms of win. Yeah, big wins from Yates and GC. You can't get bigger than a Grand Tour, and then total wins from Koi. The others are not prolific winners. They were Grand Tour helpers. I think Van Baarle won 4 Grand Tours as a helper in 3 years. But that can be more readily replaced. We'll get to the incomings. I would say Simon Yates, yeah, those riders don't grow on trees, to take Benji's expression.
Great work, my friend. Great work. Incoming transfers: Owain Doel from EF Education Easy Posts, Bruno Armirai from Decathlon AG2R, Piganzoli from Polti Visit Malta, Fiorelli from VF Group Bardiani. These are not the transfers that I would have expected 5 years ago to come to Visma Lease Bike. Some of them I like, to be clear, but some of them I'm also didn't expect that. Timo Killig from Alpecin de Koning, Anton Schiffer from Bike Aid, Pietro Matteo from Visma Lease Bike, and Temrex for... Temrex and Matteo basically come from the development team is what I'm trying to say. But the first point I want to make before we dive into individual riders, there is not a lot of money going to these transfers relative to the money that is going out. Tish Benoit, Olaf Koi, especially now Simon Yates, but that's a different situation. To me, it does not look like Visma Lease Bike has spent the money that has come in on new riders. Have they spent it on extensions? Because there were a few, right?
Well, the 2 big extensions were Jorgensen and Brennan. So 2 riders in their 20s, one at the start of his 20s, extended to 2029, the both of them. And I guess the logic is, was there a better classics prospect available than Brennan that you could bring in on big money? Like Varchek, was he really available? Probably always
not
extending
really.
at Little Trek. Not what other bit, Sturven. Do you spend the money on Sturven? It's a bigger name, or do you extend Brennan, thinking about the aging curve? So
always Brennan.
I mean, if you have infinite money, you just do both, right? But money's not infinite, and
money doesn't grow on trees.
Money doesn't grow on trees, famous West Flemish expression. And the priority then is to retain Brennan is literally homegrown talent. Jorgensen claim a bit of it because he came over from Movistar and won Paris-Nice now twice, and to extend those guys in their 20s. So, and then try to develop the guys coming in to then be the next Jorgensen, the next Brennan, if possible, or the next Simon Yates, which is, also no guarantee.
Yeah, but I look at these incoming transfers, and for me, the most talented incoming transfers to me are, I like this Timo Killig signing. I think he could become an actual element of the Classics team, even in the short to medium term, not necessarily in the long term. He's already been good in pro races like Antwerp Port Epic and so forth, but more relevant than that, I think he can play a very good role in the likes of Roubaix, stuff like that. Now, Piganzoli is super talented. I don't know where his ceiling is going to be. He comes from VF Group Bardiani. He's a rider that...
Polti
he doesn't come from VF Group Bardiani. He comes from Polti, of course.
Benji,
but he's a rider that...
you're conflating Italian pro teams.
Mate.
Italy will... Don't worry. Italian listenership is not that high.
Eolo, always. I'm sorry. Polti is the woke new thing
Eolo
in that neighborhood,
already,
but... Yeah, no. Piganzoli. We've got Piganzoli as the as the climbing signing, I would say, looking at the list of riders, and he's definitely a pretty solid climber. Nearly won a Giro stage in 2024 against Tadej Pogacar, who then rolled by him in the last bits, if I recall correctly.
You're not. Are you doing a bit?
Continue. Why would I be doing a bit?
Because that's Pellizzari. So now
Yes.
you're conflating. Yeah. Oh, you got me. Yeah, because there's Alessandro Pinarello, who's gone to NSN Messenger. There's Giulio Pellizzari, who's on Red Bull Bora, who's top 10 now, 2 Grand Tours and 1 Vuelta stage. And there's Davide Picanzoli, who's now on Team Visma Lease bike. Benji got me. So there was also a bit of delay. So like the joke wasn't landing. Not that I ever get jokes. I struggle with them at the best times, even in person. So,
but
yeah,
to be
Picanzoli,
clear, I've been in the Picanzoli camp since 2021, 2022, and he was riding for the Iolo Def team. He was super talented together with that Spanish Tercero kid. He then moved up to the Iolo Pro team, then started top 20 in Lombardia, if I recall correctly, 2-3 years ago. Really hyped about him. Happy to see him go to a World Tour team like Visma Lease bike. He's not going to win a Grand Tour for them. So he's a climbing domestique for them. Is what they need for me. Oh my God, Patrick, what are those eyes? Are those he's oddly 2.0?
Dude. Now that Only's signed, I mean, we can all be honest, like the power meter sometimes overreads. Like
last week when Twitter was shouting he was doing 8.1 watt per kilo for 5 minutes.
He's done 9 watt per kilo for 5 minutes, and it's like the VAM's like 1500. Like it's not correct. Only's obviously class. Benji's the fucking biggest hater of Only ever. And we can't wait for Only
can podium a Grand Tour, but he won't win one anytime soon, which is fine. He's a fucking good rider. I've accepted that he's a good rider. Why is this
Listen, you were wrong about Almeida. You were going to be wrong about Only, and we'll see if you're wrong about
Almeida. You were wrong about Jai Hindley, about your own countryman.
Dude, the Jai Hindley take that
a useless piece of shit before he won a Grand Tour.
That was the worst take on a transfer in the history of the pod. Easily. The worst take. So embarrassing. But hey, listen, I got a job after that. So no.
I think my Grove steak was just as bad. I said he was a Conti level
you were just doing a bit. You were just doing a bit. You're just hating on Australian riders. Yeah, that's just fine. I was trying to maybe
that's the case.
It's so fucking embarrassing. Anyway, Piganzoli's like clearly a GC prospect. Schiffer is a climber, but not as developed as Piganzoli in terms of, you know, Piganzoli's done 2 Grand Tours. Piganzoli's done multiple monuments already and led a professional team for a number of years already. So we'll see if he can take a step up. Army Rail is climbing domestique, like all around, climbing domestique.
I love
him. Maybe Army Rail is so good,
Bruno Armira is the kind of rider where he can just truck at the front of a peloton if necessary for an entire day, but that's not the real reason why I like him. He could win a Grand Tour stage if a Visma Lease bike Grand Tour fails, but even if it doesn't fail, he's going to be such a valuable domestique in the mountains for Visma. I like that signing a lot. It reminds me of the kind of signings that Ineos was doing in their Sky Days to put in their train. Does that make sense?
Yeah. He's exactly that sort of rider. And he can do, you put him in a team time trial, absolute monster, French natty champ 3 times. So you got a TTT in the Tour de France coming up. I think his craziest performance where I was like, holy, he was, I think it was on Col de Braus. Yeah, Col de Braus, stage 20 of the Tour de France 2024, when it was a huge fight for the break. Visma and UAE were just like full pissing contest. Pogacar was refusing to let Jorgensen in the breakaway. It was like a massive shit fight on this like 25-minute climb. And Armorel got in the break, and it was like Enric charging, and he was with like a Grand Tour podium guy just charging up there and back into the race. I was like, okay.
But Patrick,
he just gets in breakaways. It's useful.
We got to talk. Whoever is responsible for these transfers at Visma Lease bike does love their Italian and French riders in the last couple of years, I feel like. But specifically, This is rider that actually comes from VF Group Bardiani. Filippo Fiorelli. Patrick, have you been watching the Giro d'Abruzzo way too much this year?
Giro d'Abruzzo, everyone knows that if Bardiani had a rider to control, he wins the uphill sprint, probably wins 2 stages. All people know that. But yeah, Fiorelli, versatile rider, brought in to be like lead out or general helper for Brennan. And that's a key point here is, do you get more wins signing a pure sprinter who then needs to train, or ensuring that Brennan wins all the races he should win? So, for example, Tour of Norway Stage 1. No.
What are the indicators for you?
You can like climb pretty well. Gets amongst it.
Like, I agree. He's versatile. Is it a weird comparison that I would say he's Vendrame but more consistent?
Vendrame climbs better, I think. I think he's a bit bigger. Vendrame won like a mountain stage in the Giro, riding away from everybody.
Yeah, but
Vendrame is
not. Yeah, you're right.
Vendrame also, then you do not see him for 6 months.
Yes. Which,
that's your
Hope
point.
for Brennan's sake that we don't have that with Filippo Fiorelli.
I hope to see him in a week. So, so anyway, yeah, Fiorelli's like versatile lead out. Keelik can also do that, but he's also for the classics. Schiffer's, like climbing prospect, great numbers. I think deserved a professional shot, and keen to see what he can do. Also at Tour Down Under. And Pietro Matteo and Tim Rex from the Devo team, they're like versatile all-rounders. Matteo, a bit more explosive. Tim Rex, a bit more of the diesel. And they're both at Tour Down Under as well, so we'll see them in the next week. I think Rex reminds me of Arietta. Arietta, I think, has been like actually underrated, pretty good for UAE. And you need riders like that. I think it's good they come from the Devo team. They can also develop to then be the maybe next... Like, can they be the next Grand Tour helpers in a Giro, like Bart Lemon already has done in the Tour de France and the Giro this year?
The worry for me is when I see these transfers that, I've said it before, doesn't look like much money has been spent on transfers, and maybe that's partially because the transfer market might not have been perfect to spend certain money on certain riders, but even then I would say that I am worried for the future of Visma Lease Bike if they can't afford to spend more money on transfers in the coming years as well. Because they will need to get a deeper squad over the years. And some of these transfers I love, like the Armirai one, the Piganzoli one, the Kilik one. I enjoy the gamble on Schiffer, for example. But Owain Dool, I don't understand personally. So that's kind of the thing where I'm like, yeah. So in the coming years, I know the Simon Yates money might be available for the end of the season. That's my assumption. But if they want to get back to being competitive with UAE on a large scale, Grand Tour-wise, they did this year. Winning 2 Grand Tours versus 1 Grand Tour doesn't work that way because Tour de France is bigger. But as a whole, being as competitive, especially in terms of like victories, then these signings also won't do it necessarily. So in the future, they'll need more money, which right now, I'm worried about.
Yeah, because UAE brought in Adam Yates. He was a top rider at the time. In 2023, they brought him in, podium the Tour de France. They brought in Wellens. He was a top rider at the time. He was like a leader of Lotto for years and years and years. And now they paid him Micah. Although, the Kellerman's kind of the Micah equivalent. But I don't know. Does Derek G get you closer to... I'm not just it feels mean to just pick out Derek G, but I don't know, spending more money doesn't mean you get closer to UAE in terms of wins and in terms of winning the Tour de France.
I do think Derek G would have been a good signing for Visma. The kind of rider he is, I would have enjoyed seeing him ride for Visma. The question is, would they want the beef of the potential G transfer after what happened with Uiterbrooks a couple of years ago?
But there wasn't.
In hindsight, no, but
in hindsight, there wasn't. at the time, it seemed like something that was like going to be very contentious, but it seemed, there was just a tripartite agreement between Trek,
Yeah.
NSN, and with G. But I don't know. I think if the yardstick and expectations are not the same for all teams, if the yardstick or the benchmark is winning the Tour de France because you want to be the best team in the world, and winning monuments, then transfers, need to move the needle towards that goal. And
but there is
we can debate.
Is there a transfer you can remotely even do to move the needle towards winning the Tour de France?
Like, so no just one because is you can't move the needle.
I agree, but just because you can't move the needle towards winning the Tour de France doesn't mean you can't move the needle to being better outside of the Tour de France. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I agree 100%. That's not an excuse to just like have a bad roster outside of your Tour de France 8 riders. But then you have like the Armirel replaces, say, the Van Baarle role or the Benoit role, slots in. Then you need to develop riders to then be ready to win the Tour de France or compete in the Tour de France when Pogacar and Vingegaard decline.
Talking about victories, Patrick, I'm going to call you out. How long have you been working for Visma Lease now, roughly, in terms of your last years? 3 years?
4 years.
Why does Wilco Kelderman still not have a victory, my friend?
Listen, dude.
This is your biggest failure.
Tour de l'Ain, he could have won. He could have won Tour de l'Ain.
He came 12th. Sure.
Yeah, he was domestique. That's why he's the best. Because he's selfless. He helped the young guys.
That isn't World Tour, but that doesn't matter. It's any pro victory would do at this point. Just send him to something shit, please.
Poland was the one in 24, I think. Anyway,
would you argue that UAE sending all their top riders to smaller 1.1 and pro races is making it harder for Wilco Kelderman to take his victory, my friend?
No, because he doesn't do those races. He does literally the hardest races in the world. That's like when, I don't know, everyone's like, oh, why can't Enric win more? I don't know, because he's peaking for Tirreno, Basque Country, and then a Tour of Vuelta double. Like, it's not, life's not easy. It's hard. And
Luke's flipping out in the chat shouting, he needs a World Tour victory, damn it!
He needs a world to win? No, let's go. No, get one under the belt and then get Nicola. Look at Nicola Prudhomme. Seychelles was like, let this journeyman carpenter win, and then he won like 6 races.
Yeah, but to me, the big thing was it this year Polonia? No, it was not this year Polonia. There was a Tour de Polonia where...
Yeah, he was going to win GC if he didn't crash in the TT.
Yeah, but not just the TT. There were a couple of stages where Jonas and Kelderman were playing fucking video games instead of riding bikes.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully Wilco has a good season. Also fan favorite and like really, really good teammate, all-around rider. But we forgot Louis Barret has also signed for Visma Lease Bike, who even when Visma were good, like dominating the Cobble Classics in 22-23, the Ardennes has been particularly Flèche and Liège in the post-Roglic era, so 24-25 has been a weakness, I would say. And
good signing.
Barret showed some pretty good flashes for that in Intermarché, 6th in Amstel, 6th in Montreal, and Dauphiné on even a 20-minute climb on Domocy. I think he was top 10, so that was an interesting climbing performance. So lots of potential. And also young. He's not like 20 years old, 25, but a lot of these riders are late starters. Schiffer, Kielich has not been on the road professionally that long. Fiorelli, Armirel, and Louis Barret are actually all late starters.
I can't believe Little Red Fire Truck is moving team to Groupama and is not Little Red Fire Truck anymore. Can I just say that?
Yeah, true.
Cost you.
He's blue. Were you looking for like? Cost you. I don't know why.
No, I was just wondering
mind,
why did Patrick not look into signing Costu, because he loves that man. Because, well,
Yeah, true.
he's not as good as Bardet.
If
that's the reality.
and if the goal is winning the French National Road Championships, it would have helped though, because like Barret, Zangler, Laporte, Armirel, it's nasty. It's nasty. But
Anyway,
we'll see. That's the big race in June.
Yapping to the side.
You're right though.
I want to talk.
When we compare this, but to end your point about the transfers, to compare this, like Little Trek, Ayuso, G, who else they signed?
Bro, I have no clue. Little Trek.
Yeah, they're the main two. Soderfist, sort of here. I already counted him on the team.
I have good signings, Soderfist, but
yeah, but he's from the Diva Town. I don't count it. Like I was, in my mind, he was already on the team. Yeah, there's no Derek G or Juan Ayuso there. There's no Remco. There's no Oscar Onley, who came fourth in the Tour de France. So the team has to develop one of the young guys into that level rider, and
grow some money on trees. That's also what they need to do. But going over the team, I would say that for 2026, I do see a few topics we need to discuss. Simon Yates leaving, how is that going to impact the 2026 season in terms of team roster? Because he would have been an element for Mr. Vingegaard as domestique at the Tour de France. Outside of the Tour de France, he would have probably gone to either a Giro or Vuelta, but if Vingegaard is going to the Giro, which we were assuming that is now also confirmed. So Vingegaard doing Giro Tour double. How would it have affected Simon Yates? I would expect then Simon Yates might have gone for Tour de France support role, Vuelta leadership role. Now they don't have that leader for GC necessarily in specifically Simon Yates at the Vuelta, and they lose a very valuable rider at the Tour de France for Jonas Vingegaard. And I'm looking through the list, and yes, Sepp Kuss looked quite a bit better, I would say, in 2025 than the year before. So he's still a valuable domestique for sure. Jorgensen, a very relevant rider as well. But you kind of won the Simon Yates-like rider extra at the Tour de France, knowing that you weren't able to necessarily... you were able to explode the race in some sense, in some stage at the Tour de France 2025 with the roster that was set up. But you don't want to weaken your team across the years, you know? So do we see a potential replacement in the roster for that Simon Yates role? Not really, but how can they solve it? That's what I'm trying to look at.
Just give more opportunities to young riders is the easy solution. I mean, there's Nordhagen, Hraat, Piganzoli, Tullet, Jorgensen is also, he's won Paris twice. I think he's supposed to do Strade Tirreno Adriatico, though, with a bit of a change to his program. So I think it just gives more opportunities to some of the younger riders. But yeah, to answer your question, Benji, there is no Simon Yates like for like replacement. Yeah. The guy who danced away from Roglic in Paris 22. So,
Steven Kruijswijk reborn.
Could be.
I think he's become more important, actually, ironically,
that being
because
said,
Simon Yates leaves.
Like Visma won World Tour 1 week race last year. Anyway.
What do you mean? Anyway.
Well,
they
it's
won
like
Tour de France and Vuelta? Sorry, and Giro?
No, I mean
no,
1 week stage races. Yeah, it was just Paris, I believe.
Yes, with Jorgensen.
Well, World Tour level. So I think, again, the key is Vingegaard firing. If you have Vingegaard firing at UAE and Catalunya, then you have the favourite for both those races. And then, someone else has to step up. And
that's true.
We'll see. But you're right. It just means like where you might have paired, where Piganzoli might have been paired with a Simon Yates, now he's probably the leader in more 1 week races.
Yeah. I gotta say, I do enjoy the roadmap for Jonas Vingegaard, starting off with a UAE tour, for example. I to be honest, remember the Chris Harper memes from Colton Kirby on at the UAE tour when Vingegaard on the stage and the commentator was like,
I slipped that.
Chris
I slipped
Harper!
that past you in this pod.
Really?
Yeah, you said who won on Finestra this year, and I said Vingegaard.
I didn't notice at all. That's the worst part. But good one, actually. Good one. Now that you explain, it's not funny anymore. I'm sorry. But
yeah, I know,
it
wasn't funny that I had explained it.
I enjoyed that his presence there against Del Toro, against the likes of Remco Evenepoel, and also the good thing is like UAE Tour is a very important team, a very important race to the team of UAE. So if Vingegaard can win in their home turf, I don't think UAE will be overly happy with that either. You know, it's kind of like a psychological thing from my perspective. That said, I also think
Pogacar needs Del Toro to win UAE Tour. He is not
otherwise
going
he has
back.
to come back next year.
And he has to do it in 2027. He's so pissed.
Catalonia, fine. The rest of the start line for Catalonia, I think, includes
It's
Almeida?
also stacked.
Who? I'm
It's a
opening it
good
up.
start list as well.
I look at the start list and I
like,
see
It could be a hard race.
no one. 2026. I was in the wrong year. I'm sorry. We've got Joao Almeida for UAE Team Emirates, Butrago for Bahrain, Lipovic and Evenepoel for Red Bull Water Hansgrohe.
Yep.
But that said, with that list, I would still say that on paper, Vingegaard should be the favorite because he's on paper a better climber than any of the riders on this list. That's the perception here.
Vingegaard's the favorite for any 1 week race he does that Pogacar's not in.
Exactly. So I'm perfectly fine with UAE Tour Volta Catalunya. And yeah, we can have this discussion that Pogacar and Vingegaard are not riding the same 1 week races before the Tour de France, before their Grand Tours. But that's also a reality that's a good schedule for Vingegaard. Avoiding Pogacar means that he can take 1 week victories without Pogacar beating him, which I know that's a boring way to look at the sport because ideally we see the best two GC riders multiple times in a year. I don't want them every single World Tour race, but multiple times so that we can benchmark how they're at and that it's not just a dominant victory for Pogacar in that 1 week race and for Vingegaard in that 1 week race, that we get a bit of a clash. But from Vingegaard's perspective, I think UAE Tour Catalonia has a perfect line. Then Giro Tour de France, I think it was time for Vingegaard to do the Giro. Pogacar was definitely not going to do it in my opinion. And at the end of the day, Giro Tour double, that does bring a bit of question marks to the Tour de France because the 2 times that Jonas has done 2 Grand Tours in a row, his second Grand Tour he got sick throughout. So the question then is, how is that going to affect his Tour de France that he did the Giro before that, which is a harder combination than Tour Vuelta? Or is there a world in which Vingegaard arrives at the Giro slightly under his best to try and be at his absolute best at the Tour de France? Or is that not a realistic thing to do these days?
Well, Pogacar's the only one that's done the double like in modern history, and he at the Giro he was doing his like record climbing performances. So I'd say you have to be, especially with Almeida at the Giro, you can't just turn up and be like, oh, I'll just win at 90%. Like Almeida showed in the Vuelta, even when he wasn't at 100%, how good he is.
You say Almeida, you're forgetting Enrico. Enrique.
And Enric, yeah, it's the summer. It's not in summer, is it? So, although they do have some of the stages of the Giro in the south. But yeah, that's, I think, again, the Vingegaard schedule, not many people were surprised if I judge the reaction on social media. He wants to be the first rider in the modern era, or he would be the first rider in the modern era, I think, to hold all 3 or to have won all 3 of the Grand Tours if he does win the Giro d'Italia, even if Pogacar does then clean up the Vuelta later in the year. But yeah, that makes sense. And then Tour de France.
I do think the whole narrative of Vingegaard, if he wins the Giro, will have won the Giro, Tour, and Vuelta before Pogacar has done in his career is a bit overblown. For me, it's just the important fact is the achievement of winning all 3 Grand Tours in your career, just like the legendary man of Vincenzo Nibali. That is such a massive achievement.
It cements you as, in a different tier of GC rider historically.
Yeah, on the level of Vincenzo Nibali, come on. That's like
Vincenzo won 2 different monuments.
true. Vingegaard, come on, step up, bro.
So
Where's your Lombardia and Milano Sanremo, buddy?
yeah, so you maybe
Now, on
doing,
a serious
yeah,
note,
exactly.
Vingegaard's a better GC rider than Vincenzo Nibali was. And I have a hard time saying that as a Vincenzo Nibali fan.
Maybe a little bit better climber, but yeah, I also like the way Nibali race. Van Aert is back to what at least a traditional spring one would think, although yeah, he starts in opening weekend, Omloop, Strade Bianca, Tirreno. I think 2022 is kind of back to his 2022 program in the spring. The difference is he attacks on the Vuelta after the Tour de France, so big program for him. With Brennan, yeah, at the Vuelta with Brennan, there's like that Vuelta route. There are so many sprint stages; it's unbelievable. So or breakaway stages, I would say. So yeah, good combination there. We saw them in Deutschland Tour, pretty good combo. And Brennan is doing TDU next week, opening weekend, San Remo, the Belgian Classics, Roubaix, Swiss, and the Vuelta. So he starts his first Grand Tour in the Vuelta. So he does have, some time off after Swiss.
Is it a hot take to say Brennan wins 3 Vuelta stages and the green jersey?
No, that's not a hot take. What are we doing here? How is that a hot take?
Matthew Brennan wins the Vuelta. Is that what you want to hear?
Can Matthew Brennan beat Alberto Dainese a couple of times on a 3,000 meter altitude sprint stage with Armorel fucking pulling all day?
Brennan v. Pedersen green jersey battle would be pretty feisty.
That would be sick. The problem is, Benji, Pedersen's not doing the Vuelta, is he?
Exactly. At least not confirmed. It looks like he won't.
Jonathan Milan, when he sees each sprint stage, like, oh, lots of sprints for you in the Vuelta, Johnny. Oh, sick, sweet. Wait, they average 3,000 meters climbing. Oh no. No, I'm not allowing that hot take. So everyone, ban Benji. Matteo Jorgensen. I think the biggest change is this. Yeah.
Why? Anyway, continue.
Oh, the biggest thing is this. The biggest change is this. Jorgensen off the Cobble Classics onto Ardèche Drôme, Strade Bianca, Tirreno, no Paris for the back-to-back winner, San Remo, where he was actually in as a neo-pro back in the day for Movistar, I believe, ran a top 20, I think. Then the Walloon Triple, Amstel Flèche, Liège, Tour de Suisse, Tour de France, and Il Lombardia. So a very, very different spring for Jorgensen.
Yeah.
And completely different. Actually, almost every single race is different. And I'm excited to see him on the different program. I think this program, like, what is Jorgensen? What is he the best at? What's his? If you had to say, what is Jorgensen's like quality the best at? And I would say it's positioning, and then a 5-minute like whack. He followed Pogacar on second time Quarmont. And so, in that sense, like, what's the one where Pogacar drops everyone in Liège?
La Redoute?
Yeah, that's 5 minutes.
That is correct. Depends on who rides it. For me, it's 15. But
Pog is less than 5. Pog is less than 5, I think.
Maybe Jorgensen's 5. Let's hope not for him. Let's hope he's faster. But what I wanted to say was, I think Jorgensen's schedule is maybe the most impactful decision point here, because for me, Jorgensen's best skill is, 5 minutes is fine, but also outside of the third week at the Tour de France where he got sick, I would say relative consistency, because even in the opening weekend where I think Visma was a bit of a disaster, there. He was there.
After
the results
Molenberg,
aren't showing it.
After Molenberg in Omloop, he was there.
So he's kind of the rider that I see that when shit hits the fan at Visma and Wout van Aert fucks up and bottles it and is not there, Jorgensen is there to somewhat try and clean up the mess. Where when someone needs to be in position at a random hill in the Flemish Classics, Jorgensen is in position and the rest of the team was struggling this year. So that's how I perceive also an important role for him. So, like, to be honest, his important role in the big picture of things is that he needs to be super important for Jonas Vingegaard at Tour de France. That's an unavoidable fact, especially with Yates being out of the team. But in his own races, then I would say that I'm going to miss him at the Cobble Classics. I'll be really honest, because
yeah,
I think we're not in the world anymore where numerical advantage...
E3, he was always very, very good.
We're not in the world anymore where numerical advantage in the classics is the all-defining factor. In RVV, Paris-Roubaix, and so forth, it's the big guns, Mathieu van der Poel, Tadej Pogacar, that are significantly better than numerical advantage can deliver. So if you have like 5 Jorgensens, you're probably still going to get dropped by Tadej Pogacar at the Tour of Flanders. That's the hypothetical idea that I'm trying to portray here. But Jorgensen not being a part of the classics at all does bring me to the fact that it might be a little bit harder for Visma to win a non-monument classic in 2026 compared to... In 2025, they didn't win one, but Dwars of Vlaanderen was that moment where you've got
and Jorgensen and
Wout
was
van
there,
Aert. 2 of the 3 are gone. Brennan steps in, but I don't know where he'll step in terms of classics. I don't know what he's going to do in the classics.
Yeah. The seventh rider on the RVV team probably won't be as good as Jorgensen. That's just a fact.
For sure.
He was, as I said, he followed Pogacar on the second Quarmont this year. But yeah, I think it's good that Jorgensen tries something different, personally. And I think in very bad weather conditions in the Walloon Classics, I think he has a good chance to go for a big result.
I would rather see him in a combination.
Like
the
what
combination
Pog does.
that includes Amstel.
You start at E3.
Start at E3, include Amstel. You can say include LBL as well, even though I think that's going to be hard to be competitive with the big guns.
Yeah, but how? No, but let's on this. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Jorgensen in Paris-Nice dusts these guys, Skelmoses, the Chiccones, on 5-minute climbs. I know it's not a classic. Mm-hmm. I know it's not the same, but he got beaten by on the 5-minute wall by Lenny after he let out the whole way. I just don't see how he can't be competitive in a cold flesh.
Cold flesh.
There's just no way Stevie Williams is a better puncher than
I agree with cold
Jorgensen.
flesh. But if we look through the last 10 years, then a cold flesh has not happened that much in the sense of the Steve Williams one. That's the exception, you know?
True.
So when it's an actual watt per kilo punch, then I don't expect Jorgens to win that.
Yeah, then it's usually the Hobbits.
The Hobbits. Okay. Sorry.
I am one, so I'm yeah, but I think if it's not Volkland was second and he's not 62 kilos. And that wasn't a rainy night in Stoke the second time.
Yeah.
Is that right? But yeah, normally the winner is 65 kg or less. But we'll see. I'm keen to see him do something different.
But also, we're looking at the schedule Strade Sanremo Ardennes Tour, but there's also Tirreno Adriatico instead of Paris-Nice. We don't know the parcours of Tirreno yet. We know he's won Paris-Nice now twice.
And it's a puncher route again. Or even more so.
I don't really care as much as long as the parcours of Tirreno then ends up fitting. Because if it doesn't end up fitting, then I'm like, oh, that's a bit
I think
unusual.
I think it's more you can't do Strade in Paris-Nice. And Strade is a race that in theory should really fit Jorgensen.
That's true. Yeah, that's a very fair assessment.
And you can always say, but you can't win it. Pogacar's there. I get it. But then you just wouldn't do any race that Pog did. And I don't know. You have to line up, I think. And you never know. Amstel Gold Race, look at Skelmoser.
Is that a strategy from RCS? Putting Strade so close to Paris-Nice to make sure people do the combination instead of joining Paris-Nice?
No, you just have to race on Saturday.
What do you mean?
Wouldn't the strategy then? No, isn't the strategy that Paris should just go to 7 stages and start on the Monday instead? If like Paris could easily counter it.
Yeah, but they don't. So as long as they don't, it's RCS benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
I don't know. Which is the more prestigious stage race right now in your estimation?
To me,
I feel like Paris.
it completely depends on the start list.
True, yeah, it depends on who's there at the time. Like Tirreno 2022?
2021. Yeah.
Where I mean Pog Carpena, like with Vingegaard and that was like, and Remco, that was like quality start list.
21 as well, but then on the non-GC departure.
That was 21 was just unbelievable week of racing.
So in that era, I might have said Tirreno.
Yeah, true. I feel like Paris last couple of years has been quite good. It's been quite open till the last day.
Maybe we're underrating Paris by saying that, because wasn't that also the years where Roglic lost by almost lost GC or something, and Wout van Aert saved it in the last stage, if I recall correctly? I don't know. Don't remember which year that is.
Yeah. What do you think the Classics team looks like? So if Jorgensen's out then, what does the Classics team of Visma look like? I mean, Wout van Aert is obviously, he and Brennan, they're listed for most of the major Classics. Timo Kielich, one would think, comes in as like a Belgian all-rounder. Laporte comes back, as I said, he was top 10 Classics rider in the world before his illness last year. And then
Zangler, the light ones. I'm talking Kunis in the world.
Yeah, Zangler is listed for opening weekend as he can be like a puncher, like Narvaez type operator. Behrens, Hagenes, obviously he was actually got better and better throughout the Classics last year as they progressed.
Jonas Vingegaard
as like a rouleur. Yeah, Vingegaard.
I want to see Vingegaard ride Paris-Roubaix just for the memes.
For Roubaix. Vingegaard against Diego Pescador in Paris-Roubaix.
I think Pescador might pip him.
Oh, Eduardo Affini. He was obviously the man. Yeah. And Andrew August also at Roubaix. Affini as well. So that is still a pretty solid Classics roster. But as you say, it's missing like the punchers of Benoit and Jorgensen.
Yeah. But it's still a solid enough team where at the end of the day it will also depend on Wout van Aert's level, If you look at the monuments and the Classics, then Wout van Aert can win a non-monument World Tour Classic. We know that. That's a fact. Outside of those, then I think it's great that he's doing Strade and MSR as well this year, that he's going back to riding more than just his targets. But more importantly, it will all depend on his level. I don't see Wout van Aert winning Ronde van Vlaanderen unless there's something happening to the hardness of Pogacar and Van der Poel fighting it out over the climbs there. It's going to be hard for Wout van Aert to compete with that. That's why I don't see that. Paris-Roubaix is the one for me where I still think Wout van Aert can win Paris-Roubaix. But he needs to be at his best level.
You just need a bit of luck. And yeah, Laporte, Kielich, Behrens, Van Aert, it's still a good team for Roubaix. But yeah, Laporte had punctures. Van Aert's had illness or whatever, punctures himself in 2023.
Laporte puncturing is a fact at Roubaix.
Yeah, I mean, that might not be luck. But yeah, what are the team goals for Visma? I mean, it's on the website. Grisha Nierman, the head of racing, said winning the Giro, winning the Tour de France is the main objective. The winning a monument, so not just a cobble classic, so winning any of the monuments, and then at the Vuelta it is to win stages, with Brennan being his first Grand Tour. So stage wins more than the general classification, and the youngsters getting their chance. So there's like more of a focus on the white sort of so named white jersey group as of at the start of 2025, which is like winning races with the really young riders on the team. So pretty standard goals, I'd say. It's nothing like wacky. It'd be like, I think if the goal was to win the Vuelta and there's no Simon Yates, I think a lot of people would be like, that doesn't make any sense. But I think it's pretty realistic. Just, stage wins and then see how a young guy goes in GC at the Vuelta.
It is a bit of irony, though, that keeping everything in mind, with the likes of Sepkas doing Giro Tour together with Vingegaard, with Yates leaving the team, that Uijtenbrooks might actually have had a chance to ride for GC at the Vuelta at Visma Lease bike if he hadn't gone to Movistar. That is ironic.
Yeah, but he's doing but he's leading the Tour de France at Movistar.
Yeah, but yeah.
Oh, he is.
You know my opinion on his current level. I said it in Movistar preview. I think he can definitely top 5 the Vuelta at his best. Tour de France, I want to see him be competitive, but he's going to struggle.
Depends on the route year to year. I think this year's a pretty good route
that's
for
fair.
him, actually. I think the last year wouldn't have been, I think 25 wasn't as good for him. But I think this year's a pretty good route for him. So, yeah, what would a successful season look like? I think...
Go ahead.
I think you just got to clearly stay above, because at the moment, the narrative is Red Bull, Decathlon, Little Trek. Everyone knows UAE right now they won 100 races almost. Pogacar's the best rider in the world. That's a separate tier at the moment of wins, money, everything. I think Visma, they got to stay clear second and say, okay, all the other teams, which now have Remco, Lipovic, Roglic, Hindley, Vlasov, Martinez, they got to keep winning more than these teams. I think that's actually what success looks like. And you can put a specific race here, race there, and it's more just...
I will.
Yeah.
I don't think they can necessarily go to 45 victories knowing that Olaf Koy left. I think that's a bunch of potential victories that dip out in smaller, in Grand Tours, but also in smaller races. But I think Brennan got like 14 wins as well or something around that area in 2025. So he's on paper the replacement for that, but they were already overlapping last year. So I think for me, a successful season for this roster would be around 40 victories, around 20 World Tour victories, so similar to 2025 in that sense. But more importantly, they have to win the Giro, they have to at least come second at the Tour de France, and Matthew Brennan needs to become a Grand Tour stage winning rider. Those are the 3 things, plus I would say a monument victory, but
no, I think
the chance is less than 50%.
I think minimum two monument podiums.
Oh, yeah,
like absolute minimum, and so and Sanremo. I mean, you're going in with Van Aert and Brennan. Like, you should be looking for the podium at worst.
Just being competitive for the victory in almost every classic is super important. I think that's the point. And also with the hill classics,
and that goes back to more what I said. Like, that creates the impression of being, when people are thinking, okay, what is the best team or second best team? What are the top teams? It's in a monument. Are you there in the final 5, fighting it out to victory?
Yep.
Like, that's pretty important. If you're never there or at the Grand Tours, you have to be fighting for the victory in Grand Tours, or you are not one of the top teams.
And I fully agree with you that being that second best team in the world is a very important factor, I would say, and a very important goal, because you've got the other teams who are financially seemingly more having a more lucrative growth. Their finances are growing. The little Treks or Red Bull or Hansgrohe or whatever. Those teams are coming up. They certainly are coming up in terms of transfers and roster quality. Whether that ends up converting to results is the question. But if you're Visma, you want to stay on top of that and above that. And I don't think it's realistic to say, Visma's goal should be to overtake UAE. I don't think that's realistic in 2026. The goal should be to remain second and And then if there's new budget in the future, then you can start hunting UAE. But with what I now perceive as the budget, I don't see that realistic.
I think. Well, it depends on Pogacar. I mean, if Pogacar,
Yeah.
why would he decline at 26, 27 years old? Like, he's not at the wrong end of the aging curve yet. So, yeah, it's just not realistic when they have Pogacar, because even if he lost the Tour de France because of some, like, Vingegaard beats him, or he has probably still in aggregate victories, the team would still be number one, because Pogacar still win 20 races elsewhere, still win the Vuelta, still win Lombard, like 2 monuments. So, but yeah, I think that's still a tall order. With other teams are coming, I think the competitive landscape is a lot different to 2022, where Ineos were Ineos were on the decline. They won their last Grand Tour in 2021 with Bernal, the Giro. And then, Trek wants to be a GC team, big money in decathlon. So we already said that Red Bull, etc. So these teams are not here to be like a top 5 team either. Red Bull wants to be the best team in the world, so staving them off. And it'll be a test of the transfers, which on paper are less flashy than Red Bulls.
Yeah, than a lot of teams.
And
I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
I want to drop some hot takes, but I'm thinking about them for a second. You have any ready to shoot?
Hot takes.
I'm aching to give a Fiorelli hot take, but it's hard to find one.
I think Visma are the team that breaks the French World Tour stage race curse.
Oh. As in, you're saying that a French rider on Visma Lease
French rider on Visma will win a World Tour 1 week race. Or
and I
Grand
think,
Tour.
If I have to
don't think
assume,
Grand Tour.
You're pointing at Barreden.
Why not
Laporte?
Laporte, bingo bongo, baby.
Yeah, that's a possibility. You're right. That would be pretty massive, actually.
Yes,
that has been around forever.
Good. That stat, I see it every year, 50 times a year, and I want to stick up for France. So yeah, that's one hot take.
The inner Thibaut Pinot.
Actually, who's not on the contract? 29th rider.
Thibaut Pinot.
Thibaut, listen, buddy, listen. If you're sick of the goats,
and Bardet,
you're sick
of rider.
You're sick of the Alsace region, Planche de Belfi. There's a Vuelta slot for you.
Probably GC leader.
Okay, he can take down Pogacar, I swear. You put Pinot on Sierra Nevada, he'll win the tour. All right. You got any hot takes? Yeah, I thought you came in hot and heavy, but it doesn't sound like you have any loaded. Well, I denied your first one, but you're like, Matthew Brennan might win a sprint.
Like, the only hot take I can think of is negative, but I don't.
No, I'm a big boy.
Sepp Kuss finishes higher than Vingegaard at the Tour de France.
Fuck me, that's hot.
That would be a disaster.
Like okay.
No. The reasoning would be he wins the Giro, and then something happens for the Tour de France because of the fact that he rode the Giro. That's the reasoning. But I think it's been negative. So I want the positive one. Wilco Calderon wins a race in 2026. I have to do it after what I said earlier. Come on.
Yeah, that's a hot take. That's a hot take.
But of course it is.
Yeah, he's very well.
He has to bribe his competitors to be able to do it. Armirai wins the Tour de France stage. That's also one. I'm sorry. Had to shove it in.
Yeah, I'll allow that.
Timo Killik finishes top 5 at Roubaix. That's a hot take, especially with 2 other leaders.
Yeah, it's
in
a
the
hot
team.
take. I'm like, yeah. If people listening on podcasts know, like, yeah, you're right, Benji. That's exactly what will happen. And
I
then
want the Matthew Brennan hot take from you.
Brennan hot take.
Yeah. Apparently 3 Vuelta stages and green is not good enough.
That's not a hot take. That's not a hot take.
What
are we doing? Anyone can win a Vuelta stage.
Joffrey Soup would say so.
Like, and he has Van Aert there leading him out. He's gonna like, but yeah, you got to do it. You know, you can't count your chickens before you hatch. Yeah, I'll go Brennan Sanremo. Why not?
If Brennan had an easier roster this year, then I would say something like Matthew Brennan has more victories than, I don't know, Milan or something throughout the year, but his roster is actually really hard.
But it's not like yeah.
It's not like he's riding fucking Polonia and Catalonia and Romandy, you know? Well, he's riding Tour Down Under, which, let's be honest about it, he should be winning 2 stages there.
Maybe Tour of Holland he can bank some back into the year.
Yeah, it's not a World Tour race, though.
Sure,
or is it these days?
But Brent, no, it's not one. Brennan Sanremo, lock it in.
Okay, that's your hot take. You're not saying it loudly, but Brennan winning Sanremo.
2025, decent season, good season even, winning 2 Grand Tours. I think the transfers, it's like a not as flashy as, well, no, not just as flashy, not as proven as Ayuso, Remco, etc. And yeah, can Visma stay as the second-ranked team? Can they keep winning the biggest races, the biggest Grand Tours? Vingegaard at the Giro probably goes some way to that. What do you think about Jorgensen's change of program? What hot takes do you have? And yeah, what do you think a successful season looks like? Hope you enjoyed the preview, and go and check out the Morton.com, and we'll see you at the TDU preview later. Ciao, ciao, ciao.